Musical Talk, the UK independent musical theatre podcast.
Hello, welcome to Musical Talk. My name is Nick Hudson. Two very, very different discussions today. The first one you're going to hear is a discussion I had with Chris Hocking, who is the principal of the world-famous Arts Educational Schools, just 5 minutes down the road from our studios here in beautiful Chiswick, West London. And the second discussion you're going to hear is a review of Come From Away, that Rachael and I went to see very, very recently. So let's get to the show on the road, as we say, with the first discussion with Chris Hocking from Arts Ed. I was perusing a newspaper, if you call it that, this morning, and I want to read this out loud to you and my guest, though I'm sure my guest has heard it already. I caught the Broadway production of Disney's musical Newsies about the 1899 newspaper boys' strike in New York a few years ago, and I liked it a lot, but I enjoy the production at Arts Ed School in Chiswick, West London, even more because the terrific cast are the right age. They also fill the Andrew Lloyd Webber Foundation Theatre with an exuberance that ripped the roof off. Disney should just give Arts Ed the rights and let a producer run it in the West End at a small theatre. The show deserves further life. The next generation of talent is firing on all cylinders. I'm sat here across from the principal of Arts Ed here in beautiful Chiswick, West London, Chris Hocking. Hello, Chris.
Hi, how are you, Nick?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
At the moment, it's been a whirlwind of a week. It was like, who'd have thought that a little drama school in West London would have caused such a media storm?
Well, it's here on Musical Talk, we've always been based in Chiswick, and Arts Ed has always been something I wanted to talk about because it's such a massive theatrical hub of West London, isn't it? I mean, you can spot Arts Ed students a mile off because they're always singing in harmony walking down the high road, which is wonderful. You're the principal. There's so many wonderful things in that little quote I read out for you. To be mentioned in a national newspaper is amazing, with a show that I'm very lucky being able to see tonight, which is Newsies. The first time I would have ever seen this show. Tell us a bit about that and how that came about.
The interview?
Well,
or the show? The show. So I've always wanted to do it, and it's a really exciting show for students. And sometimes it is difficult finding the right shows for students because that they are actually they need to be playing their right age the whole time. So that's what's really important. And this is the perfect show because they're playing young adults. So I asked if I could do it. And sometimes when you ask, you get. And it just so happened the stars were in alignment, and I knew that I had the year to do it. We've got a 65% of our cohort are lads, are male this year, which is obviously a male-heavy show, and also their dance ability is really strong, and so this was the time to do it, and it's all worked out brilliantly well. So we're hugely excited. Disney have been so supportive as well. So all week we've had Disney in. They've been flying over from New York and finding themselves in lovely leafy Chiswick, which is fantastic. And we have some more coming over tomorrow as well, especially from New York, just to see the show, to see how it works. I think maybe on Broadway they had, which was obviously amazing. They had a lot of gymnasts in the show, and that's what America can do. They've got a much bigger pool of talent, and we just can't train people to sing, dance and act and also be Olympic standard gymnasts. And so there is a much more of a European sensibility and sensitivity about this show, and I think they're very interested to see potentially how it could work differently in London and in Europe, and hopefully we've shown with our amazing creative team that it is possible to do.
Tell us about your personal history with Arts Ed.
So I have been here just over 20 years now, which is quite a long time, but I haven't been in this post, and I originally came as head of dance and I came from Mountview, and I've worked my way up, then to director of the School of Musical Theatre, then director of the School of Acting and Musical Theatre, and then deputy principal. So I've now got a much snappier job title. It's a really amazing place. It really is. I've had many friends that I worked with when I was in the business, and it was somewhere where, when I was a young lad, it's somewhere where I wanted to come to. I auditioned here and got into the place, but I couldn't come because at the time there were no grants from the local authorities, so I couldn't come here. But then I've ended up running the place.
Maybe it's really good you didn't come here, because you're able to really look at it from fresh eyes, as opposed to coming here and thinking, well, when I was a student, we did it like this. And what's been the highlights? Obviously all of them, but obviously some shows you personally chose. I don't know, like Newsies.
Well, most of them we have shared and collective responsibility, the senior staff here, and we all have to get right behind a production. So obviously, I'm going to say, if I were to think of the top 5 shows that we've done here, I've been really, really excited to do. It was great to do, obviously Newsies is right up there. When we did Kiss of the Spider Woman, we did that in our studio theatre, and again the planets were just aligned. We were replacing all of our seating, and so we were able to strip out all of the seats of the studio theatre, and we built bench seating around the outside. And our studio theatre is quite cavernous, so it felt like an aircraft hangar. And it really gave us the impact of being in a Chilean prison, and so also it's uncomfortable sitting on a wooden bench. But
some pub theatres in East London can do that very well.
But absolutely, but it was, and because it felt so cavernous as well, we were all sat in one row right round the outside, and it was that Nikolai Foster directed that, and this young upstart choreographer called Drew McConey did the choreography, and it was just unbelievably fantastic, and that is always going to stick in my mind.
A friend of mine saw it and said it was better than the original production, which
that's very. I mean, it's very kind when people say that. It never could be better than Broadway or West End, what we do here. But I think what we do is we try and put our own art's head stamp on it. We don't try and replicate. We can't replicate what they do on West End and Broadway, because our production budgets are about £1,000. So when you see the set tonight for Newsies, it looks fantastic, and it's just very amazing design and design concept, and so. And that's supporting that when people come and see what we do, they go, God, it's amazing. But there's also the West End come to Chiswick, and also it's really well supported by our Chiswick residents as well. They get to see all the kids for £15 in a brilliant production, rather than having to go into the West End to see it for £100.
I saw the Arts Ed showcase the other night, Les Mis, and it's just amazing. I always say on this show programme, get any West End programme out and have a shot every time you see Arts Ed mentioned in a bio, and you'll be dead by the 3rd page or something. It must be incredibly gratifying for the school to, go to any musical in London and just know half the cast.
It's also very humbling as well.
Yeah.
It's completely humbling, and it's what we do. It's our job. We're passionate about musical theatre. We're passionate about training. We're passionate about educating, and we're also really passionate about people having fulfilling careers as well. Now, it's great if they do go off and go into the West End, etc., and do those things. But also, so many other people will go off into film and television. Loads of our people also now in casting as well. For example, the head of casting at Cameron Mackintosh is Paul Wooler. He's an Arts Ed lad, and resident directors as well. Stephen Whitson's in charge of Hamilton, and was in charge of 42nd Street, an Arts Ed lad. So they get everywhere.
It's spreading.
It is. We are taking over, I'm afraid.
And how has shows like Show My Age and Pop Idol and all that, the reality show, how's that affected the audition process as far as your concern, not only with when the kids coming here, but also when they go on to audition for shows? What are you trying to knock out of them that these shows sometimes put into them?
I think that's such a brilliant question, and the answer I would have given potentially 6 or 7 years ago is very different from the answer I'm going to give now. So 6 or 7 years ago, I said it's having a really bad impact. Everyone thinks they can just rock up at drama school and be instant stars and they want instant success. And that's gone full circle, I think, because those talent shows have now become such a parody of themselves. People actually don't want to do that. So with no disrespect to those programs, we get invited by the talent scouts of all of those shows and those competitions to submit our students for. We always say no, because we just don't think that's the right career path for them at this point. Now, that's not to say in a couple of years' time, some people who have been in the business do want to take that route because they will get more exposure. So, for example, he's not Arts Ed lad, but he's a May. But Giovanni Spano, Gio, did X Factor, I think, last year. But his West End credits are as long as your arm. But he's got more exposure from going on to that show, so he's used it to his advantage for musical theatre.
And also, lots of the people from those shows will go into musicals.
Yeah,
because it's a great pull panto, and it's a great pull for those artists.
Yes, of course. When you audition for those shows, you have to play down your training as much as possible. Like Will Young, for example, he really had to play down that he'd actually been to a drama school and he'd trained, whereas they were really playing he comes from university and is that type of person.
Give us a little example of who has come to this school then and who has now left to become wonderful, wonderful West End. I mean, Julie Andrews went to the other Arts Ed, didn't she?
She was this one. No, she was this one. Yeah, Sarah Brightman,
okay.
Dame Angela Lansbury. I didn't teach her. So I mean, the list goes on
Sam
and on
Barks,
and on. And the list. Sam Barks, of course. The list goes on and on and on. But let's think about like more recent graduates. So from a couple of years ago, Miriam Teak Lee. She left 2 years ago. Her first job was playing Hildy in On the Town at Regent's Park, and then she's gone into Hamilton, and now she's Juliet in the new show And Juliet.
The Max Martin
musical, and playing opposite her is Ollie Tomsett, who's just obviously left the lead in Kinky Boots, and also an Arts Ed alumnus from not that long ago. So we kind of secretly get everywhere. And a lot of people say, who are your famous alumni? Well, yes, Laura Haddock and those types of people, but when you look at, like you said, when you look at the West End, they're just working constantly as well. Yes, it's always great when you get like a breakout person like Lashana Lynch. She is in the new Captain Marvel film. She's one of the leads in it, and her face is everywhere. And she's now doing another TV series and something. So she's right on the cusp of being a huge megastar as well. But she's done great work at Chichester Festival Theatre. She was in Educating Rita with Lenny Henry, just the two-hander. So there's a real their training is obviously the theatre, but so she's now going to become mega. So watch this space.
So it's kind of, I guess, halfway between the spring term, I guess you could call it. I'm not looking outside. Tell us what's happening across all the years at the moment.
It's lots of happening. So this is kind of like one of our week from hell. So we've got half term next week. So half the third years are currently in Newses, and they've got 3 more shows. The other half of the year we're in a musical called Crybaby, which is not done that often, but a brilliant drama school show, because again they're playing more or less the same.
You don't want to do Grease all the time.
You don't want to do Grease all the time, so it's kind of like Grease on acid, as the best way to describe it. So they finished last week. All the students currently they've got so many auditions, which is great because the casting, they don't have to go and audition. The casting directors come to us. Sorry for interrupting. Is that normal for drama schools, or was it just this school in particular that has such a stigma attached to it? Do you know? I don't know. I think the students think it's normal, but I'd like to reassure them this is not.
Yeah, but it's a wonderful stepping into the industry, isn't it? To be able to have people handpick people for their shows. And before we started, you said you just got some very exciting news for another West End show that features lots of young men dancing around, which is very good.
Yes. And one of the offers is for a lead as well. Obviously, I can't say what show it is, and I can't say who's got it, but how brilliant that they're getting offers and it's only February.
So this is, ArtSed is also sort of an agency as well.
We don't have an agency at all. So the way that it works is we have a showcase and the students can sign with agents after the showcase time. But if they were to get a job beforehand, I ask them to make an early decision, and then I hand over the negotiations of the contract to an agent, because I'm not an agent, it's not what I do, and it works much better. So say, for example, they go on a tour, they need someone really looking after them, and it's important that you get a really fantastic agent looking after them on tour. It's tough when you go on tour for the first time.
And what business skills are learnt on this for the students here? Because so much, I mean, I'm not a performer either, but I'm a freelance person in the arts industry, and you're not taught this stuff at school. You're not taught tax returns, and you're not taught how to be an adult. And do you help them in that direction as well? So
we have this amazing module called PPP,
right,
and it strikes fear into their hearts. Professional Practice Portfolio. And it's basically, it's their own Bible, as it were, of what they need to know as a professional actor. So in that professional practice portfolio could be the names and addresses of all the casting directors and what they cast and the creators that they work with. So they've got they're starting to form how they fit into the big picture. They will also have lessons in tax, the dreaded tax and tax return, and how to do that, what it means, what can they do with that. Yes, what they can write off, indeed. They have talks from Spotlight. Spotlight will come and talk about how that works. Equity will come in and talk to them what that is like. A company manager will come in and talk to them about the role of a company manager, and also how it works on tour. We have ex-students coming who have been understudies or swings, how they can prepare and be ready to take on those types of positions within a show. Then we also have a great deal of well-being, how to look after yourself when you're not in work, how to look after yourself when you are in work, how to deal with rejection, how to deal with difficult work practice. So it's really important that you get the whole gamut of training. It's not just all about acting and dance.
Open up that course to the public, because that would be wonderful.
You can come and audition for us like the other 2,000 people do.
Every time I sing, a cat dies.
Oh no!
But what shows would you love to do in the future that are obviously Dear Evan Hansen might be a good one for 50 years down the line?
Potentially, yes. That's. I would love to do James and the Giant Peach, which is by Pasek and Paul. That is something that I would love to get my hands on. Yeah, well. I know. I'd love to get my hands on that. It's really interesting. The music is beautiful. The text and the acting through song that you could do, the interesting movement would be really, really great. Dear Evan Hansen is not potentially a great drama school show because it is
about one person.
It's a bit of a one-horse race, really, and we want to show our students off as much as possible. There's always lots of exciting stuff that we would, for example, Waitress wouldn't actually be a very good show for us because they're all a little bit older and the experience they've gone through after being married or divorced or whatever. So again, that doesn't quite work for us. I'd obviously love to do Come From Away at some point.
I'm seeing tomorrow.
that would work particularly well.
Cats.
We've done Cats.
Okay.
We've done Cats, and Andrew came to see it. And it was a great success. I'm sure we'd love to do that again.
What a wonderful segue! Thank you. When you enter this building, you can't help but notice that Andrew Webber, just to add another arrow to this school's bow, is a massive part of this school, isn't he? In his foundation with Madeline and things. Tell us about that.
So he is a great supporter of the school. He's the president as well, and he's just not a president in name. He's very interested in what's going on. So also he's paid for a new theatre, new TV room, new radio suite, and disability access as well, and also a whole loft conversion where we put a costume store. So that's part of the build that you can't quite see. But he also does he does give scholarships for people to come here as well. So and then the people who have been awarded the Andrew Lloyd Webber Foundation scholarships are doing fantastically well. So when you walk in, you see the Andrew Lloyd Webber Foundation Theatre, and it is lovingly called the Andy.
Very handy.
Yeah, and we didn't call it that. The students called it that, and I told Andrew, I said they call it the Andy. He absolutely roared. He really loved the fact that it's called the Andy, and we now all call it the Andy.
And that's where I'm seeing you use tonight.
You are seeing it in the Andy.
I've never been in the Andy before.
It's beautiful. It's really beautiful. It's designed by Norman Bragg, who's now retired architect, but he's now on our board of trustees. And we're about to, you may have seen in the press, we're about to do a redevelopment as well. We build new rehearsal studios and a brand new studio theatre as well. So it's great to have an architect with that eye on our board advising us. So we start that refurbishment in July.
And I've been lucky enough to be on the other side of working with students here. Years ago I did a workshop with a show that I'm working on, and you very kindly gave us access to students, and they are so quick. In about 4 days we came up with a hour-long performance, and they just pick things up like that. Is that something you can teach, or is that something you look for?
No, it's something we teach. And we teach it by osmosis as well, so that before they really even know it, they're suddenly very quick. And if you tell people we're going to teach you this very quickly, they will completely and utterly freak out. So we have ways of making you be very quick. And a lot of that is to do with the way that we teach ensemble singing. And they are super fast, and by the time it gets into the third, we don't teach, and I reckon we don't teach sight singing, and we don't teach music theory, we teach something else. And in the arts ed, we teach everything in the arts ed way, but we teach something else. It just makes people incredibly quick musically, and also we do instill personal discipline as well. So when you have a music director and they're note bashing, and even if they can't read music, they're very good they're hearing it.
They can judge space.
Yes, absolutely, and they can work out the timing and all of that. But they will go away and they can learn it very quickly, and they're learning actively. They're not learning passively, so they're not just sat there listening to it and recording it on their dictaphone. They're actually learning it and physically learning it as well, and that's how they remember it.
And you go back to you go back through the history of musical theatre as well within teaching here, which is also very important to see where this art came from.
Yes, and it's a really new art form, and that's what I think a lot of people forget. It is new. So although the components of musical theatre, acting, singing, dance, we've been acting for a long time, we've been singing for even longer, and we've been dancing even longer than that. But when you put the three skills together, it's quite new. So even when you look at the early musicals in the 1920s, like Showboat, you had a singing chorus and a dancing chorus. That doesn't exist anymore. You have to be able to do all three things. So really, it's a very new art form, and it's still developing, and we're still finding out how it works. So even we're at the cutting edge of teaching musical theatre, but even for us, we're reviewing what we do every year, every 2 years, and so the business requires something very different now than it did 3 years ago or 2 years ago. So the only way to keep abreast and make your students as versatile as possible is to make sure that we know what's going on.
And what would you like to see, speaking of dictaphones and things, how would you like to see technology aid not just teaching musical theatre but the genre as a whole? I mean, I'd love to see Netflix pick up a musical wing and I'd like to see more documentaries about it, not sugar-coated documentaries.
No, I think that'd be really good. I think a documentary on the making of a musical would be absolutely fascinating, because of course it's all very well and good filming a musical, but a live performance is very different from a film version of a musical as well. So they're very different medium. That's really interesting. People still love, we can send email scores to people's iPads and stuff, but there's nothing beats having the score in your hand with a pencil and making notes in the score. It just makes you learn better. It really does. Yeah.
It's like scripts, and I guess
it is, and we can put things on the scripts, because some people who have dyslexia, for example, they may find it easier on a tablet, but some people don't. So it's whatever works for you as a student, we will absolutely help with. So,
what's been one of the best, when I say personal development, not your personal development, one of the students' personal development stories that you still moves you when you? Was there someone who arrived timid and shy, and the old drama musical cliche of I'm now a massive star and get to live. I mean, are there any stories like that?
There are a couple of stories. Well, I'll tell you how many stories there are. There are 45 stories of those in every single year.
Yeah.
So at the moment, I could be giving you 135 stories from the students that are in this building at this present time, let alone the people that have been over the years. Everyone is very very dedicated to their art, and they're very, very special people. And what they bring to this institution is just extraordinary. So ArtsEd isn't a building, it isn't a name. ArtsEd is the students. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And this building, when there are no students in it, is a very dull place. There is no energy. There's no vibe. And the students are genuinely very, very lovely people. And the main story, the headline for me is, at the moment, there's a lot of angry people in the world. It's not a great time. But you come in, you walk through the doors at 14 Bath Road, and we are in this little utopia of people who really want to be here. People are always on time. People are very polite. We have no problem with our neighbours. Everyone always says how lovely
well, it helps
everyone
the
is.
pub next door as well.
Yeah. You will never see the staff in that pub. And people really want to be here. And of course, we've got the jewel in the crown, as it were, the School of Musical Theatre. We also have a School of Acting. We also have the day school and the sixth form as well.
Tell us about the junior school.
So the junior school is really, really interesting because here you do your English, French and maths and all the academic stuff, the humanities and sciences that you have to do, but also it's coupled alongside performing arts, and so they choose either acting or musical theatre when they start here at the age of 11 when they go into year 7. And the reason why a lot of people want to come and do this type of education is because you can't get it anywhere else. Unfortunately, the state school are cutting drama, music and dance. And it is very clear that these skills, even if you are not going to become a performer, these skills make you a very interesting, motivated person. And so what we are doing in the state schools, we are cutting all of the arts programs. And interestingly, let's go to the other side of the world, let's go to China. China, and we've been helping them a little bit as well with this, China are introducing singing, acting and dance, and especially into the high achievers, because it makes them much more interesting, it makes them much more of a team player, they're far more motivated, they're far more creative in what they do. So we've got huge waiting lists for people trying to get into the day school and the sixth form here for that reason, because the kids love being here. There's no truancy. And I'm sure everyone loves it, even from the age of 11 right the way through. And there's this utopia as well, because you've got this right the way through. Yeah, indeed. So you've got HE kids, higher education degree students, and they see the little ones, and there's the real moral responsibility that you have to behave appropriately amongst the youngsters. And for the youngsters, there's a real aspirational feel. Gosh, look at those people, they're doing this, they're doing muses. I want to be like them. And
they get to see the show as
well.
They
get to see the show, and it just really works. And we've got one at the day school, but this has to be one of the younger kids is in the show as well, and it's so great. And the guys in the show really look after them. So it is a lovely little utopia in a world of madness.
Obviously, you mentioned this refurbishment, not a refurbishment, but an extension.
Yeah.
Everyone in Chiswick's doing these days.
We're not going down, it's okay. No basements.
So you're adding a whole costume department, you said? Or?
No, we've already got one, so we're adding new rehearsal studios. At the moment, we're rehearsing in spaces that don't match the theatre, so we're having rehearsal space that actually the same size as our theatres. Also, as well, the standard of our singing is just extraordinary, but at the moment, some of the singing lessons are taught in what were toilets or broom cupboards, and the excellence of what we do is not reflected in our facilities. And so we have to have the facilities that reflect that. And when I've shown our neighbours or residents or people in the business round, they can't believe we're teaching singing in a toilet.
And also, from my memory, the rooms get very, very hot in the summer and quite cold in the winter.
Yes.
How does that affect the voice when it comes to rehearsing in those?
Well, that's not good. You want a really level temperature. So now with the new rules of BREEAM and all of that thing, we have to make sure that the air quality is really good. And apart from the voices, it really ruins the pianos when you go from hot to cold. I know, it costs a lot of money to tune those pianos. So it just absolutely. So we have to keep replacing the pianos every year really. And a lot of people say, why are you throwing those pianos out? Because they're useless. We bash them to death, as it were, and it's that variation of hot and cold all the time. So that's part of our refurbishment as well. So it'll be much cleaner air, much more healthy environment to be working in.
Can you share anything about future productions that we can look forward to?
No, I can't. I can't even. I haven't signed a contract yet with any of them, but the rest assured.
I mean, how far in advance do you plan these things? What's needed?
So we're exactly at the point where we're really looking for our programme for next year. So for the season starting in 2019, September 2019. Which interestingly is the start of our centenary as well. Art said we'll be 100 years old from September. We've got lots of plans to celebrate that. So we start to look at the season round about now. You have to, if you want really good creators, which we do, and we get amazing creators, you start booking them now as well, just to make sure that they've got it in their diary as well.
Thank you very, very much, Chris, for sharing a very, very inspiring school, and I hope that continues to grow, literally. Up to the atmosphere, is that where we're heading next?
Who knows? I'm not sure where we can go after Newsies, quite frankly.
And you've got a nice logo outside, I guess.
Yes.
You're in the middle of a rebrand
Yes,
for the anniversary,
we are indeed, yeah.
which is very exciting, and people can find more artsaid.co.uk
That's
if
the one.
they need to. And you are on Twitter, aren't you?
I'm on Twitter, yeah, Hocking Chris.
And the school is on Twitter,
Artsaid London.
Artsaid London, and thank you so much for talking to us.
My pleasure, Nick.
Musical talk.
My thanks to Chris Hocking and everyone at Artsaid. I saw Newsies that night. It was absolutely excellent. I've hadn't felt such joy and elation from a show from a very long time. I kept having to remind myself every 10 minutes or so that this was a school. The cast was amazing. The band were brilliant. All the leads. The dancing was phenomenal. And it was nice to see a show that I knew well in the back of my mind. Well, I knew the songs, but I'd never really seen a production of it, so for that to be my first Newsies experience really was a joy. It was also a joy to see Come From Away, and I'm going to hand you over to the discussion that Rachael and I had about that right now. I'm joined once again on location today. I'm sat here with Dr. Rachael Livermore. Hello, Dr. Rachael Livermore.
Hello, Mr. Nicholas Hudson.
How are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Good. We have just been to see Come From Away, and a brand new musical for you, for me, and for London. What did you know about the piece before going in?
So I had read the basic story about this town in Canada that took in stranded passengers on 9/11 in, I think, an in-flight magazine many years ago. So I was already aware of the basic premise, but that was it.
And did you think, that makes a good musical, once you heard it was a musical?
It wasn't my first reaction, but it is a heartwarming story, and
Yes.
heartwarming stories make good musicals.
We were talking about it earlier, and you said it's not a traditional musical in your mind,
Well, it's
because it doesn't have
really...
80s ballads in it.
You're making fun of me and my love for 80s ballads again. So, no, I don't think it's not so much that it's not a traditional musical. The music it doesn't have traditional musical songs. I didn't come out of the theatre singing anything, which is for the benefit of everyone around us, I think.
I didn't come out of the theatre singing anything, which is the benefit of the world.
Right. But the music is appropriate for the piece. It's a lot more folky. It does drive the story, so in that sense it is a traditional musical.
So the story is you have a town which seems to have the strangest accent of Irish meets sort of Canadian, which is lovely, because the Irish accent is so beautiful. And then you have all these planes. Was it 300 planes or something?
38 planes.
38 planes.
But big planes.
Which is still
That's
a lot of
people.
people. 7,000 people or something, they said, descending upon this little town. Because of the 9/11, the whole of the American airspace was closed. And so you also have the townsfolk playing the people who are on the planes, but not just one plane, lots of planes. So it's very, very much an ensemble piece. There is no leading part in this show. There are standout songs. The wonderful Rachael Tucker, who plays a female flight captain, has a wonderful song where she sings about her love for Aeroplanes, your favourite song on the show, I think.
Oh,
Rachel.
it was the belty ballad, so yeah, I was a big fan. It was a very moving song because she sings about how all she's ever wanted is to be a pilot and the obstacles she had to overcome. She said was she the first female captain at American Airlines, did she say? And how the events of 9/11 shook that, because she was seeing something she loved, aeroplanes, being used in such an awful way. It's a beautiful song.
Yeah, it's like spoilers here. You thought she was going to quit the industry, but she kept on going, which is nice, do you think?
Yeah, it was like a character backstory song, I guess. I was expecting it to drive the plot and for her to come away with this not wanting to have anything more to do with planes. But no, it seems like she retired some time later and carried on her life as normal.
And a lot of the people in this musical are real people, and I think a lot of it is based on conversations, phone calls, dialogue, probably letters. And the thing about 9/11 is that it seems so near in our memories if we were around to remember it. But there are people nowadays who don't remember, and lucky them in some way, 9/11. So this is now a historical piece, which is really weird to think about, and this musical for me really hit 9/11 home.
Oh, it absolutely brought that back. The shock of something's going on but we don't know what. The part where they're initially not allowed to leave the planes, and these are transatlantic flights, they've been on them for ages, and they're not being told what's happening. And I think, most of us of our age and older remember what that felt like. Something bad is happening, but we don't have enough information. Yeah, it's interesting. So I just saw the film Vice the other day, and I was in a cinema full of 22-year-olds who were too young to know what was going on at the time and don't have the same memory of it. So it would be interesting to see how this is received differently by people of different ages.
Because 9/11 is never mentioned, isn't it? We're just going in with the assumption that
they do say the date.
Yeah, but they never say...
But they never actually say what happened. No.
They never say what happened. They never mention the Twin Towers or anything like that, which is quite nice in a way.
There is a really weird, disconcerting bit where the passengers are all still stuck on the planes, but the captain puts on the radio as the president is giving a speech. And of course the president isn't explaining to the nation what's just happened. He's just giving a reassuring speech, we will rebuild kind of thing. And that must have been horrifying, thinking this, and I think one of the characters says it's World War III, and I think that's supposed to be a joke, but that's how people felt on that day.
It's a one-act musical. Do you want it to be longer with an interval? In fact, to get wine.
I was okay with the lack of interval, actually. I thought an hour and 40 minutes would be a long time to sit still, but the pace never lets up. And I don't think there is a nice break point where you would put an interval. So no, I actually quite liked it.
Did you notice that there's a Revolve? So your Revolve fandom will carry on with this production. We'll keep going round. Revolve only started being in use when the people got off the plane and into the town. The thing that impressed me most was the ensemble nature of the piece, how the cast played both the townspeople and the, I'll call them plain people, that's Plane. You were a bit worried about that at the beginning because you thought it might get a bit confusing, but you were okay when it came to accents and things. Yeah,
I frequently find that when you've got the same people playing multiple parts, I get very, very confused. But in this case, it was so obvious because, the local people all had this weird Newfoundland accent.
This is Newfoundland.
Right. Whereas the plain people were mostly American. There's a British guy.
A very British guy.
Very, very British guy. So it was very obvious when they were locals or they were plain people.
And there was a nice allegory I noticed. I feel so wanky saying that. There was a nice, clever thing I noticed where they talked about how Newfoundland was originally part of Canada and the continent, and possibly America as well. The continent was once together and then it was separated. So it's like this piece is about people coming together and then having to leave and then coming back again, and then, which is funny enough, representative of what's happening in our politics at the moment. So I doubt it's been planned that way by the many producers of this musical. What was going on in the back of your mind watching this story?
It's extremely timely, and as you say, it can't have been entirely planned because it's been in works, right? I think of it as the perfect Brexit antidote musical, because as a really bad thing happens and a whole bunch of people are nice to each other.
And a perfect perfect Trump-to-dote musical.
Yeah, and it also kind of addresses what's going on in the world, because this is people from all over the world. I mean, they're not nice to everyone, though.
No.
And I think maybe it's important that they left that in, that there's one guy in particular, I think he's Egyptian, he's Muslim, and he is not treated nicely. So maybe it is a good thing that they kept that in, because that was the outcome of 9/11.
He was a real...
Yeah, he's a real guy.
Yeah.
And that was, the outcome of 9/11 was the rise of Islamophobia. So it's good that that's referenced even in a nice, uplifting, happy musical full of people generally being nice to each other.
The way Canadians are.
Right. It is extremely Canadian.
And it's a Canadian musical. This isn't written by Americans, which is nice, because I think if it were, it would have been a completely different tone altogether.
Yeah, I think it would have had a bit more of a USA vibe to it, perhaps. It's just so nice.
Yeah. It sort of reminded me of Once. Because it was in the same
theatre.
Same theatre, and it had chairs on stage.
And it did have Irish-style, folksy music. Yeah.
But this was a lot more entertaining. Sorry, we seem to travel back to the 80s with this background music. I apologise. It was a lot more, ironically, feel-good than Once, but then again, A Hysterectomy is probably a lot more feel-good than Once, in my mind.
That's mean. Once was fine. They just forgot to write an ending for it.
Or songs, or a story. The set for this show is interesting.
I think set is a strong word, personally.
The back wall for this show was interesting.
I do like the fact that as you walk into the theatre, it's just a bunch of chairs and tables and trees. And it is, I think, I was actually going to make a joke. This is obviously the local Tim Hortons, but I thought that was a bit too obvious. Turns out it's the local Tim Hortons.
Oh, so that's a direct design reference, is it?
No, it's just the social centre of every small Canadian town, I believe. My limited experience of Canada. The entire... I think the set was fitting. I never felt like, that this could do with a big flashy barricade.
It didn't get in the way of the people, which is what the show's about. And in a way, that's what this town probably is. It probably was dull, and they explain... Well, it's just a nondescript place that has a massive airport, because it was a hub, wasn't it, for flights coming from...
Not so much a hub, it was a stopover for flights that needed to refuel after crossing the Atlantic, which obviously they don't need to do anymore. So it's this weird place that's a tiny town with a massive airport.
And it's nice that this town then became used for what it was originally meant for, and they couldn't cope. Yeah. So there's a massive feeling of chaos in this show, isn't there? As there would be. And one doesn't think about the effect 9/11 had on shops and where people needs to be, what they need to do, who they needs to help. And that's what this musical really brings home very, very nicely.
Yeah, the population of the town basically doubled. And they start off housing people in, I think it's community centres and things, but then people just end up taking these plain people into their homes. And I was just reading in the programme that they were putting out calls for things that they needed, and at one point they had to tell people to stop bringing toilet roll because they had an entire school full of it.
And it's not a show you need to see again, though, I don't think, because the emotional impact could only happen once.
I could imagine seeing it again. I'm probably not going to see it 50-something times. And part of that is just that it is a little bit of an emotional roller coaster. It does feel very intense, and I think the lack of interval helps that intensity. You do kind of feel that you're in this, panic station situation with the people on stage. I don't know. I would go again if I wanted to take someone to it.
Would you listen to the cast recording?
Probably not.
Would you listen to the Airplane song again?
What was the Airplane song, my belty ballad? Maybe.
Me and the Sky.
Yeah, me and... Oh, okay, the bad grammar is upsetting.
It should be the sky and I.
Yes, absolutely.
That's a better rhyme as well.
Yeah.
The rhyming wasn't perfect in this show, I will say, but it didn't bother me because the music was so earthy and folky. It almost felt like it was not planned lyrics, because a lot of it was so rhythmically spoken, and it's why it reminded me of Once. As you said, it's not traditional musical theatre writing.
Yeah, it is a lot more like folk music, so you don't have to be quite so strict on your rhymes.
But certainly go and see it. It's a beautifully put together, again, very slick piece. The cast put that all in. Stay for the curtain call, please, because people didn't, and it annoys me, and people just walk out because they think the band is playing, that they think the show is over. But you are there to appreciate people who've also worked hard all night. And yeah, that's
it's only an extra minute out of your life.
I know.
Can't do it.
And to the person that tried to shun Rachael and me out of the theatre at the end of the piece, did you not understand the irony of what you just saw? A show about people being nice.
Yeah, I think certainly go see it, because we are all so sick of everyone being so angry all the time on the news at the moment. And there is a lot of repeated refrains of people who can't stand watching the news anymore in this show, which I think is something we all feel now. So it's very timely, and it's a nice bit of escapism and a nice view into how humanity can be pleasant even in the worst times.
So Come From Away is playing at the Pheonix Theatre. I really do urge you to check it out, because, as we said, it is exactly the kind of show we do need right about now. And Rachael has since confirmed that Me and the Sky is actually correct English in the context of the song, so that's nice that is settled. In a few weeks' time, you're going to hear another episode about Come From Away, where I was able to sit and talk with cast members from the show, but also the real people that these cast members portray. So that should be very, very interesting indeed. But for now, that's this week's episode of Musical Talk done and dusted. I hope you enjoyed it, and we shall see you very soon. Bye-bye. For more information about Musical Talk, please visit our website at musicaltalk.co.uk. You can email us at feedback@musicaltalk.co.uk, listen to past episodes on iTunes and YouTube, and follow our social media channels on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You have another show at the Drury Lane with also folk music in it, but slightly shorter people.
Are you referencing Lord of the Rings?
I am, yes.
No, it didn't remind me of that at all.
It did when we had the songs in the pub, though.
Okay, another time I've heard folk style music.